Most people spend their lives chasing illusions. They cling to comforting stories that the world rewards kindness, that talent always rises, that good things come to those who wait. But step outside the bubble for a moment and watch closely. Life doesn't bend to kindness, intelligence, or even honesty. Life bends to power, and in the modern world, power wears the mask of money. Money is not just paper, not just numbers on a screen. It is the most universal language of trust and leverage. With it, rules soften, doors open, and mistakes are forgiven. Without it, even your smallest flaws become magnified. That's the uncomfortable truth people don't want to face. Because to accept it means admitting that most of what they've been taught about life, work, and morality is a carefully constructed lie. Think about the psychology of attention. When a wealthy man walks into a room, people lean in. When a broke man walks in, eyes drift away. This isn't about personality, it's about perceived value. Social psychology calls this the halo effect. Wealth creates an aura that makes others unconsciously attribute intelligence, charisma, and even morality to the person who holds it. The poor man might be smarter, kinder, or more capable, but his voice is soft. The rich man doesn't even have to speak. His silence is loud. This is why Machiavelli's wisdom still burns centuries later. He knew rulers without wealth were puppets dancing on someone else's strings. Today, nothing has changed. You may not wear a crown, but you live in a battlefield where dollars, not swords, decide the outcome. The bank account has replaced the armory. Whoever controls money controls the future. Yet most people are conditioned to think about money in small, safe ways. Save a little here, spend a little less there. Maybe one day retire quietly. That's not safety, that's entrapment. Psychologists call it loss aversion. The human brain is wired to fear losing what little it has more than it desires to gain what it doesn't. That fear keeps people crawling, playing small, refusing risk. They call it prudence, but in truth, it's surrender. Now imagine wealth not as comfort, but as armor. With enough of it, the storms that crush ordinary people become nothing more than inconveniences. A car breaks down, you replace it. A medical bill arrives, you pay it without flinching. A job disappears, it doesn't matter, because you don't depend on anyone's permission to survive. Neuroscience shows us that chronic financial stress actually shrinks the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making and planning. Poverty doesn't just limit your wallet, it limits your mind. Wealth reverses this. It quiets the fear circuits, freeing the brain to think long-term, to take risks, to create. This is why you cannot afford to pursue just enough. Enough is an illusion, a trap disguised as contentment. Once you settle, you stop fighting. While you enjoy small comforts, others are building empires, buying influence, and reshaping the very rules you live under. By the time you realize it, your comfort has become a cage. Money is power in its purest form. It buys freedom, it buys safety, it buys time, the one resource you can never replenish. And yet, most people sell their time cheap, trading their hours for wages that barely sustain them. This is the tragedy. They sell life itself for scraps, while convincing themselves that this is noble, or at least stable. But stability without control is not stability, it is dependency. Consider the psychology of relationships. Who dictates the terms? The one with endless options, or the one with none? Money multiplies options. It transforms you from someone who needs approval into someone others seek approval from. This is the cruel irony. When you have nothing, people avoid you. When you have everything, they orbit around you like planets around the Sunday. And here lies another bias at play, status quo bias. People cling to their current situation, however painful, because change feels uncertain. They tell themselves, I don't need much, just enough to be comfortable. That sentence is not humility, it is self-sabotage. Comfort makes people docile. It dulls ambition. And while they rest, those who refuse comfort are climbing, acquiring, expanding. Think historically. The Medici didn't rule with swords alone. They ruled because they controlled money. Kings, popes, Entire nations bowed to their financing. The lesson is simple. The lender always owns the borrower. And in today's world, banks don't fight wars, yet entire nations kneel to their influence. That's weaponized wealth. But here's where most people fail. They think money is earned only through labor. They grind, they sweat, they boast about their hustle. But hustle without leverage is just exhaustion. The wealthy play a different game. They don't just think about income, they think about assets. Assets are soldiers that work even while you sleep. That rental property, that investment portfolio, that business system, those are the armies of wealth. Every dollar is sent into battle, not to sit idle. Psychologists call this the scarcity mindset. The poor hoard money, afraid to lose it. The rich deploy it, knowing that stagnant money is wasted power. One man works 12 hours a day and feels proud of his grind. The other spends his time building systems that scale, investments that compound. At first, the grinder looks stronger, more disciplined. But 5 years later, the system builder is free, while the grinder is broken. Machiavelli would laugh at the illusion of safety. Playing small is not safety. It is the biggest risk of all. One bad month, one health scare, one market shift, and the illusion collapses. Real safety comes not from avoiding risk, but from controlling it. And control requires wealth, not a little, but enough to build walls no storm can breach. And here's the hardest truth. Society wants you weak. That's why you're told, money isn't everything. Or, don't be greedy. Notice who repeats this most loudly. Those who don't have money, or those who benefit from keeping you dependent. It's a convenient morality that keeps you obedient, grateful for crumbs, while they quietly collect fortunes. The reality is this: money doesn't change who you are, it amplifies it. If you are generous, money makes you more generous. If you are cruel, it magnifies your cruelty. Money is not evil, it is a magnifier of character, and character without resources is powerless in the real world. So the principle is simple. Money is not optional, it is not secondary. It is the main battlefield of life. Every day, someone is fighting for more of it. If you don't fight harder, they will own you. That is the Machiavellian truth. You must acquire so much money that no one can chain you again. Not enough for comfort, not enough for survival, but enough to build a fortress. Because without it, you are at the mercy of everyone. With it, they are at the mercy of you. Imagine this clearly. The man with wealth doesn't need to beg for chances. He dictates the terms. He chooses when to work, who to work with, and when to walk away. This isn't luxury. It's the foundation of real freedom. Freedom is not just the absence of chains. It's the power to reject what doesn't serve you. And in a world driven by economics, only money buys that kind of freedom. Psychology reveals something uncomfortable here. Humans are status-seeking creatures. From childhood, we recognize who has more. The kid with the biggest toy draws attention. The adult with the fastest car commands the room. This isn't superficial, it's hardwired. Neuroscientists studying the brain's reward circuitry found that status increases dopamine the same way addictive substances do. Money is the most universal signal of status, which means the wealthy don't just buy goods, they buy perception. That perception bends reality. When you have money, people reinterpret your flaws as quirks, your silence as wisdom, your mistakes as lessons. When you don't, those same traits are ammunition against you. This is confirmation bias. People filter reality to confirm what they already believe. If they believe you are powerful, your actions are framed positively. If they believe you are powerless, every misstep is proof of weakness. And this is why ignoring wealth is not just naive, it is dangerous. Without money, you are invisible. Your voice doesn't echo. Your choices don't ripple. Opportunities shrink around you. Poverty is not just about lacking resources, it's about lacking influence. It is life lived on mute. Now, most people resist this truth. They'll say things like, "I don't care about money," or "I just want to be comfortable." But watch their actions. They follow the lifestyles of the rich on social media. They gossip about billionaires. They measure themselves against what others have. This is called social comparison theory. Humans constantly rank themselves in hierarchies. Even those who say they don't care about money still measure life through it. Denial doesn't change the game. It just makes you lose by default. So, let's dissect how wealth truly functions. Think of money as three things: a shield, a weapon, and a magnet. First, the shield. Wealth protects. It defends you against crises that destroy ordinary lives. Enemies with lawsuits, problems with bills, disasters that would collapse someone else to you. They are minor irritations. In political psychology, this is called structural power, the ability to shape not just choices, but the entire environment in which choices are made. Wealth creates a structure around you that blunts threats before they even reach you. Second, the weapon. Money can silence enemies, buy influence, and bend reality. Gold often achieves what swords cannot. History proves this again and again. Empires weren't just built with armies, but with treasuries. Even today, politicians rise and fall, not by speeches, but by financial backers. Machiavelli's timeless lesson: power without wealth is fragile. Power with wealth is unshakable. Third, the magnet. Wealth draws people. Loyalty, admiration, even love often orbit around it. This isn't cynicism, it's psychology. Humans are drawn to perceived security, and money signals abundance. Partners, friends, allies gravitate toward those who seem like safe harbors. Attraction is rarely about pure character. It's about the resources and protection you symbolize. But there is an advanced principle that most never grasp: the art of hidden wealth. Sometimes, the most powerful position is not flaunting what you have, but concealing it until the right moment. This is what game theorists call strategic ambiguity, leaving others uncertain about your true capacity until you choose to reveal it. Imagine sitting in a negotiation. One man brags about his wealth, hoping to intimidate. The other stays quiet, appearing modest. Then, at the critical moment, he drops a single fact. He owns half the city's real estate. The room shifts instantly. The loud man collapses under the weight of hidden power revealed. This is the kind of psychological warfare Machiavelli would endorse, because the element of surprise doesn't just defeat enemies, it crushes their spirit. Now, let's connect this to the neuroscience of fear. Scarcity activates the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center. This keeps people trapped in fight or flight mode. They overreact to small problems, underinvest in big opportunities, and cling desperately to what little they have. But wealth quiets the amygdala. With abundance, fear fades. Your brain shifts from defensive mode to creative mode. You stop reacting to life and start shaping it. This is why the poor live in chronic anxiety, and the wealthy seem calm, almost untouchable. It's not just confidence, it's neurology. Money literally rewires the brain's relationship with risk and reward. And here's the paradox. Most people claim to want safety, but by refusing risk, they guarantee the opposite. A layoff, a medical emergency, an economic downturn, that's all it takes to collapse a life built on fragile wages. The so-called safe path is the most dangerous one of all. The bold path, the pursuit of wealth beyond survival, is ironically the only one that builds true safety. At this point, the objection always surfaces. Isn't chasing money greedy? Isn't it selfish? That's the narrative fed to you to keep you obedient. Because if you believe money is evil, you stop chasing it. You stay dependent, quiet, controllable. Meanwhile, those who told you that story are collecting money themselves. Philosophically, money is neither moral nor immoral. It is amoral. It doesn't create virtue or vice. It amplifies what already exists. A kind person with wealth creates massive good. A cruel person with wealth magnifies their cruelty. The money itself is neutral. The character of the person wielding it determines the outcome. But here is the bitter reality. Without money, even good intentions are powerless. Without resources, you cannot protect, cannot provide, cannot expand. This is why the moral excuse of rejecting wealth is so dangerous. You cannot help the world by being powerless in it. So the call to action is this: stop playing for survival. Stop telling yourself small stories of just enough. Start playing for dominance. Start thinking in terms of empires, not comfort. Comfort is the enemy of greatness. Every time you say, "This is enough," you stop climbing, and while you pause, others continue building, buying, influencing, shaping the very world you inhabit. The battlefield is not fair. Laws bend for the wealthy. Justice favors those with resources. Opportunities flow to those who already have plenty. The world doesn't reward the needy. It rewards the already powerful. Once you accept this, you stop wasting time on illusions. You stop begging for fairness. You start building the only thing that makes fairness irrelevant: massive wealth. Because remember this: when you have nothing, everyone controls you. When you have everything, you control everyone. Let's go deeper into the mechanics of money. Most people think about income. How much can I earn for my time? That mindset is the trap. Income is fragile because it's tied to hours. If your body breaks, if your job disappears, your income collapses. That's why the wealthy don't obsess over income. They obsess over assets. Assets are machines. They don't ask for sleep, they don't demand rest, and they don't quit. Assets produce wealth, even when you're not present. A business system, a portfolio of investments, intellectual property, and real estate, each one is a machine that multiplies your time. Psychologists call this leverage. Leverage is the ability to apply small inputs for disproportionate outputs. 1 hour of strategy can create 10 years of cash flow if the system is right. This is the critical difference. The poor man sweats for every dollar, trading life for scraps. The rich man deploys systems. At first, the grinder looks noble. Look how hard he works. But noble exhaustion is still exhaustion. And 5 years later, the grinder is broken, while the strategist is free. Behavioral economics sheds light on why most people never escape this trap. It's the present bias, the human tendency to value immediate rewards over future gains. That's why people choose short-term pleasures over long-term investments. They buy new gadgets instead of building assets. They celebrate paychecks instead of multiplying capital. The mind prefers comfort now, even if it costs freedom later. But freedom only comes when you reverse that instinct. Delay gratification now, build relentlessly, and you create a future where money works harder than you ever could. Think about how money flows in society. The landlord doesn't sweat more than the tenant, but money flows to him. The banker doesn't work longer hours than the borrower, but interest tilts the game in his favor. Why? Because they control the systems. Money is gravity. It flows toward those who control its direction. If you're not in that position, you will always be at the mercy of those who are. And here's another Machiavellian insight. The one who lends always owns the one who borrows. Entire nations bow to creditors. History is littered with rulers who thought they had power, only to discover their thrones were mortgaged. Nothing has changed. If you are in debt, you are owned. If you are the lender, you own. This is why the pursuit of wealth is not just about acquiring, it's about controlling flows. Now, let's explore the psychology of negotiation. In business, who wins? It's rarely the desperate man who needs the deal. It's the one who can walk away. This is the principle of BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. If you already have wealth, you always have alternatives. You can walk away, you can dictate terms, you can bend the situation to your advantage. If you are broke, you have no BATNA. You are forced to accept whatever crumbs are offered. This applies in relationships, politics, and daily life. The person with resources has options. The one without resources must beg, and begging, in any context, weakens you. Here's the cruel irony. When you needed help, when you were broke, no one cared. But once you don't need anyone, everyone suddenly appears. This is the psychology of social proof. People chase what others already value. Once wealth signals your worth, the world bends toward you. You become magnetic, not because of who you are, but because of what people think you can provide. That's why it's not enough to earn a living. You must build a fortress so high, no storm can breach it. People will call you cold, obsessed, ruthless. Let them. When the storm hits, when economies crash, when jobs vanish, they will look at you with envy, because you will still be standing while they scramble for scraps. Consider history again. Dynasties exist because families understood this principle. The poor think in days, the rich think in centuries. They don't just build for themselves, they weaponize wealth to secure their bloodlines. Land, education, influence, networks. These are seeds planted so their descendants inherit power, not survival. This is how names echo through time, not because of charity or morality, but because of strategic wealth. And here's where neuroscience adds another layer. Studies on willpower show that financial scarcity consumes mental bandwidth. The poor literally make worse decisions, not because they are less intelligent, but because their minds are overloaded by survival anxiety. When you have abundance, your brain is liberated to think strategically. Wealth doesn't just change your bank account, it changes your cognitive capacity. It frees you from mental shackles. So what does this mean in practice? It means stop seeing dollars as expenses and start seeing them as soldiers. Every dollar you spend frivolously is a soldier you've sent to die without a fight. Every dollar you invest strategically is a soldier you've deployed to bring back reinforcements. The poor celebrate spending, the rich celebrate multiplying. But let's sharpen this even further. The real masters don't just collect wealth, they weaponize it. They use it to buy influence, to create loyalty, to silence opposition. They understand that money left idle is wasted potential. Consider influence. With wealth, your words carry more weight. Fund a project, sponsor an idea, back a movement suddenly. Your opinion is amplified. People don't just hear you, they align with you because resources validate your voice. Then, loyalty. Loyalty is not bought with speeches, it's bought with bread. History is full of empires that rose not because their leaders inspired, but because they fed their armies and allies better than anyone else. A hungry man doesn't care about philosophy. He cares about who fills his plate. That's why loyalty built on words alone crumbles, but loyalty built on wealth is unshakable. And finally, silence. Money can quiet enemies faster than arguments ever could. Sometimes it's a settlement, a payoff, a favor. Sometimes it's less visible influence that makes problems vanish before they surface. Machiavelli would remind us, gold often achieves what swords cannot. This is where most people fail. They think of money only as comfort, but money is not comfort. Money is leverage, protection, and command. Without it, you're forced to fight with your bare hands. With it, you win before the fight begins. In the advanced game, hidden wealth. Nothing disarms opponents more than underestimation. Play quiet, let them think you're weaker than you are. And when the moment arrives, reveal your true position with crushing force. The shock doesn't just defeat them, it destroys their will to resist. That is the art of invisible power. The point is simple. If you're not pursuing massive wealth, you're surrendering power. And in this game, surrender is slavery. So, where does this leave us? It leaves us with a choice most people never consciously make. Either you become the architect of wealth, or you remain the subject of those who are. There is no middle ground. Comfort zones, good enough, and modest survival are illusions that sedate the masses while the powerful consolidate their control. Let's strip away the illusions. People say, money doesn't buy happiness, but what they forget is that poverty buys misery. Poverty buys stress, humiliation, and dependence. Money won't guarantee joy, but it eliminates the chains that strangle it. The philosopher Schopenhauer argued that suffering is the default human state. Joy is rare. Wealth doesn't erase suffering, but it shields you from needless suffering. It gives you the space to pursue meaning instead of begging for survival. And this is where psychology becomes brutal. Human beings adapt. This is called the hedonic treadmill. Get a raise, buy a car, move into a bigger home eventually. The excitement fades. That's why chasing wealth only for consumption is empty. The new toy will not fill the void, but chasing wealth for control, for freedom, for influence that doesn't fade because it ties to deeper drives. The drive to shape your destiny, the drive to build something that outlives you. When people reject wealth, they often justify it with morality. I don't want to be greedy. But look closer. Is it really virtue? Or is it fear disguised as virtue? The truth is, pursuing wealth requires risk, sacrifice, and ruthless focus. Rejecting it is easier, and instead of admitting fear, people mask it with moral superiority. But morality without power is impotence. What good are your values if you have no resources to enforce them? This is where social psychology crushes another illusion. People respect wealth more than virtue. You may be the kindest, most ethical soul alive, but if you're broke, your voice barely whispers. Add wealth to that same voice, and suddenly it thunders. This isn't cynicism. It's the human condition. Influence flows not to the most moral, but to the most resourced. So what's the path forward? It begins with reframing money itself. Stop seeing it as paper or numbers. See it as energy. Energy you can direct, store, and multiply. Money is potential. Potential influence. Potential protection. Potential creation. When you waste it, you waste power. When you invest it, you build a fortress. Then comes mastery of psychology. Understand your biases. Your brain is designed to keep you alive, not to make you wealthy. It urges you to chase short-term safety, to avoid risk, to conform to the tribe, but those instincts were built for survival in the wild, not for dominance in modern society. Wealth requires overriding your default programming. It requires stepping into risk while others cling to false safety. And finally, adopt the mindset of dynasty. Don't play for today. Don't even play for your lifetime. Play for centuries. Build assets, systems, and networks that outlast you. That's how names echo through history. That's how ordinary men transform into legacies. The wealthy already know this. That's why the same families dominate for generations. They understood a truth most never accept. Money is not just about comfort, it is about immortality. Not biological immortality, but the immortality of influence. When your name funds institutions, when your wealth shapes cities, when your descendants live under the shadow of what you built, that is how you outlive flesh. But here's the hardest truth. This game is not fair, and it never will be. The world does not reward the most deserving. It rewards the most strategic. You can cry about fairness, or you can play the game as it is. Those who cry will be forgotten. Those who play will be remembered. So ask yourself, do you want to live quiet, dependent, disposable? Or do you want to live as a force? Because the difference is wealth. And wealth is not optional. Not if you want freedom. Not if you want respect. Not if you want your voice to matter in a world that ignores the powerless. The lesson is brutal, but simple. When you have nothing, everyone controls you. When you have wealth, you control yourself. And when you have massive wealth, you control the world around you. The game of money is the game of power. Stop pretending otherwise.